We have never needed to discuss the same issue in 2 consecutive episodes. Well, there's always a first time, and this is it. So we are going to be discussing again the Ukrainian conflict with Russia, which I will just say right off, should be a United States and NATO conflict with Russia, and to state even more clearly, a military conflict with our NATO allies against Russia. Well, let's discuss why Russia was able to invade Ukraine with Russia's only opposition, the Ukrainian armed forces, without the help of one single ally. Ukraine wants to be a member of NATO since 2008. Ukraine borders Russia. Ukraine is the largest nation in Europe. Ukraine overthrew its Russian-backed government in 2014. It's a democracy, and yet none of the European allies, that's right, not one, not the United States, not Canada, not Australia, not Japan, no one, militarily speaking, came to its aid. Sending blankets, bandages, and weapons is nice, but it does not compare to sending soldiers, tanks, missiles, Air Force, surveillance planes, fighters, bombers. That is what is needed when facing an army of over 150,000 who are heavily armed. Now for the most tragic defeatist quote ever stated by an American president, unfortunately given by our current president, President Biden. The United States has no intention of putting American soldiers on the ground in Ukraine. Why, if that didn't give Putin the green light to just go in and just demolish, destroy, kill, and subject Ukraine to being ruled by Russia. That quote I just gave of 11 words will go down in history as the most defeatist and disloyal statement ever given to our worldwide democratic allies. Biden's sanctions, rather than military actions, clearly states his priorities of money over human life. Think about it. You can lessen my income. You can decrease the food I eat, the size of my house, the clothes I wear, but I could still be happy, and I would still be alive. But shoot me with a gun, kill me, I have nothing. Mr. Biden, you are a fool. You will be responsible at present and in the near future for the death of possibly millions of Ukrainian citizens, men, ladies, children, citizens and soldiers of a democracy, an ally, and permitting Russia to take over their land, their homes, their wealth, their industries. Punishing Putin and Russia merely by your sanctions? Oh my God. Now let me tell you something. I have not heard one retired American general or other military expert, nor have I heard many politicians say that this is the best route of sanctions without any military threat to Russia. Biden's quote confirms what Xi Jinping, leader of China, has been saying for months. The United States has grown weak. Also, one must ponder on the amount of time and money required to enforce worldwide Biden's sanctions. Pakistan has already offered to buy wheat from Russia, the wheat that we normally would. Ha! Oh, come on, Biden. Good luck. I hope you've got enough time and money to enforce your useless sanctions. The democratic world will be just plain lucky if Putin just stops now with taking over Ukraine and going no further. Hey, Bobby, baby. It looks like this Ukrainian thing is giving you a bout of climate change, because your temperature seems to be rising rapidly. Greetings, Mother Nature. Yes, it will have that effect. Basically, comparable, yes. Do you have any suggestions how the U.S. should handle this heated situation? I'm not asking you to pass judgment. I don't expect you to be emotional. I just would like some good advice you might share with us. Well, Bob, it sounds like you're suggesting some common sense solutions. I have some. Get a new leader. Biden's not a leader. Well, I guess he is in name only, but not in substance, not in attitude, not in decision making, nor in practicality and human compassion. A true American leader would defend and protect his fellow Ukrainian allies. Ukraine is a democracy. They want to be a member of NATO. Isn't that enough? Why, defending democracy and fighting alongside our democratic allies was reason enough in World Wars I and II, and the Korean conflict, and Vietnam, and Afghanistan. My gosh, who changed the rules? I'll just tell you who did. President Biden. He could have said that we are sending our troops into Ukraine, and that would have scared the hell out of Putin. And he should have convinced the NATO nations to join Ukraine in combat against Russia. By then, Putin would never have invaded Ukraine. Thank you, Mother Nature. That is the answer, and the reasoning, and the common sense which must be presented to our listeners. Right on, Bob. And even though President Biden should have announced our involvement in the conflict militarily before Russia invaded, it's not too late now. It is now more certain that our military involvement is necessary to ensure victory. Yet he still refuses to commit the United States Army in the fight for democracy against a dictatorship, a communist dictatorship. And that Biden convinced the other NATO leaders to be as timid and non-committal as he is. It is very clear that the only brave and heroic people in this conflict are the citizens of Ukraine and their president, President Zelensky. In your American history, which makes NATO membership a requirement for United States military involvement in a conflict between fellow democracies and belligerent dictatorships, fascists, Nazi, and communist nations. Why, this was a completely arbitrary, personal, timid decision that Mr. Biden made. And you fight with guns, you don't slap with sanctions. And it's nice to know that finally the Netherlands, Estonia, Poland, and Germany are all sending weapons. And at last, the United States is also sending some high-tech weaponry to Ukraine. Thank you, Mother Nature. Thank you. And you know, listeners, if anyone should know what to do in a situation like this, it would be our Mother Nature. Well, Bob, let's get it straight now, Bobby baby. I never had to fight. I just happened. And frankly, everything else just happens. But evolutionarily speaking, my offspring, in general, cannot survive without fighting. And clearly now, the democratic nations need to become a democratic herd. Yes, a herd of ferocious, strong animals capable of fending off any evil adversary. To hell with some alliance or affiliation. It's like a group. It's like a herd. It's like the herd of democracy. You fight as a group. One would think that evolution had made that very clear. Okay, Mother Nature. You've made your point. You've made it well. And what you say is reality. And so I thank you. Golly, this is the first time that I have had to ask you to calm down a little instead of you asking me. Why, you are acting so human today. Why, you are expressing true emotion. Well, what the hey, your human attitude and emotional constructs are just rubbing off on me a bit. I've been around you enough. I'm merely being altered by an event. Why, Mother Nature, you're making me feel so positively spirited by your behavior. I'm going to just start saying a few good jokes and stuff, throwing a little wisdom maybe. Well, I'm sure we can all use a little good advice now, can't we, Bobby, baby? Yes, Mother Nature, but I'm not sure about classifying all this as good advice. It might just be a little humor, it might be a little silly, but yet there might be some inherent good advice in the mix. But Mother Nature, I was just thinking. Well, that's good, Bob. Thank you. I was just thinking that President Biden should address the Russian people and government. Perhaps he should begin with the positive steps Russia has taken by supplying Europe its gas and oil commodities and our willingness to exchange other products so that economic prosperity can be achieved for the U.S., Europe, and Russia. And perhaps the Russian people are pleased by Putin's overall performance. Yet one major belligerent evil event, yes, the invasion of Ukraine, negates years of positive progress between Russia and its European neighbors. The Russian people must exert a positive pressure on Putin to withdraw his soldiers from Russia's benevolent neighbor, Ukraine, a country which cherishes peace, not war, with no intention of invading a foreign country, as is Russia now. Mr. Biden should encourage the Russian people to protest peacefully and consider Putin's threat of using nuclear weapons as a threat to all the world and mankind, and that perhaps Putin cares not for even the goodwill of his own people. Gosh, Bob, that's a good common sense solution. Why, you should be writing speeches for Mr. Biden. He could use some good help. Thank you, Mother Nature. Well, now can I just share with our listeners some good, positive, common sense advice and a little silly humor thrown in along with it? Sure, Bob. Why not? Okay, let's start with this. Love many, trust few, and always paddle your own canoe. And let me stress that a good scare will have you acting much faster than good advice. Although Mr. Biden might be an exception to this. And listeners, here's a personal favorite of mine. Resisting temptation is easier when you assume that you'll have another chance. Unfortunately, that goes for procrastination, too. I'm just a plethora of good advice today. Be careful, Bob. Remember, a minute of silence has greater power than an hour of talk. Hey, I'm just using 15 minutes. Come on, Mother Nature. Just one more. Last one, I promise. A bend in the road is not the end of it unless you fail to make the turn. Okay, listeners, now I want to give thanks and gratitude to Danny Briel for once again being our technician and producer, and of course to the listeners who have donated to our GoFundMe account at 1+1 Makes 2 by Bob Dow. I thank all of you. Lastly, a personal wish that the United States supports Ukraine in every category of assistance during this time of need. Bob? Yes, Mother Nature? Now how about giving our listeners a moment of silence in which to reflect? Thank you, Mother Nature. I get the picture. Bye, everybody. Bye. I wasn't saying goodbye to you, Mother Nature. I know you weren't. Bye, everybody.